Hi, my name's Anthony Turner, and today my guest in the studio here is Hunter Leonard. Hunter is a professional marketing strategist and who's a fellow of the Australian Marketing Institute. He's got over 25 years experience in planning and launching brands in over 50 different market segments. Hunter's regularly called upon by the media to comment on marketing issues, won 6 Marketing Excellence Awards in the past 12 years. Now, Hunter, you specialise in strategy and ethics, and you've got your rapid benchmark of over 800 SME business owners, which is one of the largest marketing surveys in the world, I believe.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of time marketing when a survey is done. It's really just ask the business owner, do you have a problem with marketing? And so it comes up in a lot of surveys as being one of the number one issues for businesses, like how do I get new customers?
Yeah.
How do I do my marketing?
Yeah.
What do I do about social media? Whatever the question, doesn't really matter. But a few years ago we decided we'd actually go in a little bit more depth, and so we actually designed 50 questions.
Right.
And we've asked those 800 business owners those 50 questions, which has given us a fair idea of what they do and don't do in terms of marketing, which then helps us really understand then how we can help them. What are the missing bits?
Yeah. So were there any sort of real surprises in that research?
Yeah, well, the thing that wasn't surprising was that most small business owners don't really have a formal marketing program, because a lot of them aren't really trained as marketers.
Yes.
They go into business because they're a technical, what we call a technical expert in something.
Yes.
They have a passion for framing pictures or plumbing or, bricks and pavers or whatever it might be. So their passion, generally they've come out of a larger organisation and decided they wanted to start their own thing.
Yes.
Which means they're an expert in the product or the service, but not necessarily on the other things which you might need in business, like marketing. So that wasn't a surprise.
Right.
What was a surprise was how few are actually formally doing marketing or asking the questions of their customers and these sort of things that you need to have even in a small business. So you might be running a business on your own, but you still need to know what your customer wants. Yeah.
Hunter, over the years that you've been doing marketing, which are a number of years, how has marketing really changed, do you think?
Well, it's gone through a lot of phases. I think we're probably in the age of social media now, everyone would agree. It's the buzzword.
Yes.
The strategy of marketing hasn't changed since it was invented. The strategy has always been to find out what the customer wants, then to understand how well you are prepared or organised to deliver on that want or need.
Yes.
So that hasn't changed. That's what we call the strategic part of marketing.
Yes.
The thing that has changed is the tactics. In the 1940s and 50s, it was all about advertising. It was the big media, get the ads out, radio, TV, etc. And then came the age of direct marketing, direct mail and sending things to an individual rather than mass broadcast sort of media.
Yes.
And we've been through email marketing, in the last 10 or 15 years, I suppose, and then the last few years it's been social media. So while the strategy hasn't changed, certainly the focal point or what's popular or what's going on and what people are talking about, those tactics have changed. You still need to use them the same way though. You need to use, doesn't matter whether it's social media or direct marketing or advertising, you still need to be communicating something along the lines of what you've found out from customers in terms of what they need.
One of the things that I'm hearing a lot about is that marketing's changed from what is that broadcasting model, which is very much blah, 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 put out enough of it and some of it will stick, as distinct from more of what's I'm hearing is termed as an engagement marketing, where you're really getting inside the customer and what their needs are and talking to them is like we're having a conversation here, as distinct from just trying to sell stuff to you. Yeah,
exactly. And I think what occurred is that because really big business with big budgets, they're very visible in the media. So what occurred meant, probably 10, 15, 20 years ago, and I think it still occurs sometimes, is that you'll hear case studies and people say, oh, Reebok did this or Nike did that or, McDonald's did that, which is somewhat irrelevant to the small business owner. Mm-hmm. What I used to say is that the smaller the budget you have, the smarter the marketing you need to be. Smarter as a marketer you need to be, because if you've got a big budget, you can be as dumb as and still get a result. But sure. I think small businesses' real opportunity is to be close to the customer, and that's how they can compete against a bigger business, because they can understand the customer better, because they're either working more locally or with more of a niche of similar types of customers who have similar needs. The problem is that most small businesses don't really have their antennas out there. They're not really listening to what customers are wanting and needing, so therefore they can't compete as well as they can. Yeah.
Okay, so how can a customer, the small business owner, get closer to those customers? What are some of the things? You've got your rapid approach.
Yeah.
What are some of the elements of that a small business owner, like any mum and dad or shop owner or restaurant or whatever it may be, can actually do to get closer to those customers and understand their needs?
Yeah. Well, surveys is really the key answer to that, and that should always be asking customers what they need and want from you,
Yes.
and always then asking them when you've delivered something to them, how satisfied were they with that service or product that you delivered. With those two parts to your research model, if you like, understanding prospects or customers initially, and then checking all the time that you are continuing to deliver a really high standard, then you can be a lot closer to the customer.
Sure.
We actually found that less than 15% of those 800 businesses that we surveyed had done a survey of their own within the last 12 months. So that means that 85% of the businesses are probably operating on assumptions or making stuff up.
Okay, yeah. And what sort of survey tools would you recommend for the small business owner?
Well, this is where technology has really become quite cool lately. Most of us carry a smartphone or an iPad around. It used to be that you'd go into your restaurant or somewhere and you'd see a little piece of paper and a pen, and it'll say your satisfaction survey. It'd be on the counter or something, and you'd have to fill it in, and the business owner would have to get that and go through the 20 or 30 or 50 or 100 that they had done, tabulate it all by hand, and then work out what percentage of customers wanted, quality versus a range versus whatever they wanted in that restaurant, for example. Now there's really some awesome free tools online, like SurveyMonkey and various other tools which you can actually subscribe to for free. And you can get the basic functionality from those tools accessible for no cost. There is paid subscriptions above that for more. But the average small business owner doesn't need to get too technical in the sorts of questions that they need to ask. The average satisfaction survey that we would run for small business would be 5 or 6 questions. The average, what's my unique proposition or relevant benefit that I should be promoting, might take 8 or 10 questions. And with those free models, SurveyMonkey, you can get up to 10 questions in a survey for free, and they report it all for you. So you can give the customers the link. They can go into their smartphone from a mail or an SMS. They go in, fill in the details, and at the end of it, you've got 100 responses. It's all been categorised, tabled, and put in nice little diagrams for you, and then so it saves the business owner a lot of time in understanding how to do a survey. Plus, they have a whole series of templated surveys in there that you can actually use. So there's a satisfaction survey,
so
for example.
You don't even have to work out what it is, what questions to ask.
Exactly. So they're a real teaching tool as well, which is awesome.
What about some of the feedback surveys that, like you're talking about restaurants, things like, say, Urban Spoon, those sorts of things? Valuable tools?
Absolutely. Any survey is a valuable tool. In fact, even going onto Google, and if a small business owner has been using Google in any way, there's free tools within Google where you can check what keywords people are searching for. So for a local area, you can get the keywords that people are searching for in terms of restaurants. So that's a survey in itself, because Google basically is one massive big survey. If you look at it, it's if people are searching for something, it's what they need. Yeah.
Understand.
Exactly.
With this, once you've done this research, it's good to do the research and have all the questions. What do I then do with it?
Yeah. Okay. So that's the key trick. Is the first part is finding out what the market needs. So we designed the rapid model. It's 5 steps. So maybe I'll go through that briefly. It's research is the first step, which we've just talked about. The second step is analyse. The third step is plan. The fourth step is implement, which is the actual getting the marketing out there. And the fifth step is the measurement. We call it detection, because it kind of worked out nicely as a word, right? So after you've done your research, whether that be surveys or analysing Google or doing a satisfaction survey with the existing customers, you'll have some needs and wants from that group. You'll have an idea that, say, most of your customers want you to be giving them delivery of product on time, for example. Let's just take one example. Then when you're writing a marketing plan, the second step is analyse. So you know what the customer's needs are. Now you've actually got to work out how well are you organised to be able to deliver on those needs. So, for example, if most of your customers wanted delivery before 9 o'clock the next morning if they ordered from you and you're a hardware store.
Yes.
But you didn't have a truck. So you're reliant on a courier company to come and pick up, and they never picked up before 10. You'd be you'd be missing the mark.
Absolutely.
In an extreme example.
Yes.
So the analysis or analyse step is really a series of tools, and they're very basic. They've been around for years.
Yep.
Find them in any textbook, but we don't try to get too much into the theory of it.
Right.
But something like, say, a SWOT analysis, which
Yes.
is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats.
Yes.
The business owner could go through his business and have a bit of a look over the business as to what he's good at, which is strengths,
Yes.
what he's not so good at, weaknesses.
Yep.
What are the customers wanting that is quite a popular thing, that's an opportunity.
Yep.
And then maybe what his competitors are doing, which is the threat side of things.
Yes.
So you can fill out a SWOT very simply, compare that to what you've found in your research, and then make sure that you're organising your business around those needs.
Okay.
So if you've got delivery before 9 o'clock, then maybe the business owner needs to go and work with another courier company, or he might need to go and buy his own, his own
trucks or whatever.
own truck,
Yeah.
or employ someone to go and do those
Yeah.
deliveries. So it's really a response to need,
Yes.
and being better at responding to the need than the competitors are. So you also
Yes.
then have to analyse the competitors. You can do the same thing. You can, within your SWOT, you can write down within the threats part of it. If the competitors are really good at delivery, that'd be something you'd need to work on.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So taking it a little bit further, I've now sort of done the research and I've had some analysis and sort of come up with an idea of what I'm good at, what I'm not so good at, where my opportunities might be, and I've got to know my competitors a little bit. Where do I go from there?
Okay, so the real key part of the marketing plan then is you've done your research, you've done your analysis. The plan section is actually working out what you're going to focus on.
Okay.
What are you going to emphasise to your customers? What we found in our research is a lot of businesses just go out there and they'll list everything, everything that they do, 24-hour, blah, 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 blah. And you see these lists with ticks next to them in a lot of marketing for small businesses, it's everything.
Yes.
But you've got to really, in communication, it's good to try and get one or two messages across to a customer. Most customers, or most of us, are quite busy these days.
Yes.
We're bombarded with messages.
Absolutely.
We're carrying our devices around.
Yes.
The emails are popping up all the time. People are busy.
Yes.
So we know that small business owners are as busy, if not busier, than most humans on the planet. And customers are the same. So you can't go off and spend trying to get 50 messages across to someone. You've got to get what is the one thing that you want to stand for.
Okay.
You might want to stand for fast delivery. You might want to stand for really great smiling service,
Yep.
All your competitors might be really rubbish at service, but you can be really good at it, and your team are really happy and they look after customers, and that's what so you can focus on one thing.
Yes.
That's the plan section, is writing a statement of 25 words or so of what you intend to focus on, what you want customers to think of when they see your brand or see your business.
And that's a really important point in my mind. It's not about what I, as the business, wants them to think about. Which is what I often see in advertising and promotion. It's what's really important to those customers.
Exactly.
Because they're the ones who are going to be buying. How does the small business owner get their head around, making that shift from what's important to me as the business owner versus what's important to the customer?
Yeah. It is from the data in the surveys and the
Yes.
analysis that you've done, you've always got to be customer centric in small business.
Yes.
A classic case in Melbourne is coffee.
Yes.
I was asked to comment on coffee in the media recently because somebody had rebought the Starbucks brand, and
Yes.
Starbucks were out there saying they wanted to be the best coffee in Australia, the number one coffee choice, and we have a bit of a chuckle because in Melbourne it's the local cafe owner that really owns that area if he makes a good coffee.
Yes.
Conversely, if he makes a bad coffee, he's unlikely to stay in business for very long.
Right.
It's almost a survey in itself, isn't it?
Yes,
You've got to
absolutely.
be checking people like the coffee, they're going to come back and order every day.
Yeah.
Somebody who orders a coffee from you every day for a couple of years is probably worth $4,000 or $5,000 to you, not $4, which is the cost of a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
So you have to be customer centric. You have to always be understanding what you've done well, what you need to improve. Doesn't matter whether you're dealing with 3 customers or 3,000. You've got to have your finger on the pulse on that.
Yeah.
We call them buttons.
Right.
When you do a survey, if 90% of your customers were interested in quick delivery,
Yes.
that's a button.
Okay.
And then all advertising, all communication, whether it's direct mail or an ad or a radio ad or social media posts or an article that you've written on something is designed, what you're trying to do is push that button.
Right. Okay.
It sounds kind of, you push the button and people respond.
Yeah,
and that pretty much is the
Yeah.
simplicity of what marketing is about. Now,
Yeah.
it might kind of sound a little kooky, but if most people are interested in fast delivery and you don't talk about fast delivery, you're unlikely to then get the attention
Yes.
of most people.
Okay.
So you have to be better at that than anyone else, or within a local area, or with a particular type of customer. Do you know what I mean? So
Yes.
a small business owner can't be all things to all people.
No.
They have to be focused on either a geography around their shop,
Yes.
or a particular type of customer, a particular age group, a particular profession if they're business to business. But you definitely have to be customer centric, because there's no way you can survive long term unless you've satisfied a group of customers, because they're going to have to give you money for something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
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 And it's that, I guess it's that blend of playing to our own strengths and finding where those fit with the customer base that we're looking to serve.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you go back to the SWOT analysis, you can match things up. So
Yeah.
if you're strong and there's an opportunity in the market, so that's the S and an O
Yes.
combined,
Yes.
that's an opportunity for you.
Yes.
That is a market opportunity. That's something you can really take advantage of it. The other end of the spectrum, if you're weak at something and there's a threat, then that's like a whole,
Yeah.
oh,
Let's stay away from that
yeah,
space.
yeah, or you've got to really handle it, because you could
Yeah.
go out of business.
Yeah.
And you do see this a lot at the moment in manufacturing in Victoria, particularly southeast Melbourne. We have a very strong manufacturing area,
Yes.
but that area is gradually declining because the manufacturers haven't responded to the threat of cheaper imported components.
Yes.
You see some businesses down there who have changed the dynamic of what they do.
Yes.
I'm familiar with a transformer business down in southeast Melbourne,
Right.
and they've gone from making little tiny transformers that go in toasters,
Yes.
which have been replaced by cheap Chinese imports,
Yes.
and they've gone to making these massive big transformers for mining companies. Same technology, except
Okay.
it's this big, not this big.
Yes.
They only make 10 of them a year now instead of 10,000 they used to make.
Yes.
But because they're in Australia and a mining company can call them and they can deliver within a week and a half, as opposed to the competitors that take 6 weeks, they've now found a niche that they can survive in.
Yeah.
Not only survive, prosper, make a really good profit.
Absolutely.
And it was taking something they already knew, but really thinking quite out of the box about another way to deliver it,
Absolutely.
different type of customer.
And it's interesting you say about that. So what's going through my mind is that using that manufacturing southeast Melbourne area, is that whilst there's a direct effect on those manufacturing businesses, and this one's obviously done some very good things to change the dynamics of their business. Yeah. The coffee, going back to the coffee guy in that space who's been providing lunches for the workers and everything else, that's a real threat for that business as well.
Absolutely.
And they have to be on top of that to understand what dynamics may be changing for their businesses, even though they're not directly related to the industry area.
Absolutely. And there's another little tool in the analysis section you can use, which is called a pest analysis or a pestle analysis.
Yes.
And it's basically an influencers tool for a small business owner. And they can go through, it's designed so they can just categorise things.
Yes.
So P stands for political.
Yes.
So you can go, well, okay, has there been a change of government? Have they got different opinions on something that relates to my business? Now, for some businesses, it'll have no effect at all.
Right.
However, if you've been running a business doing insulation a few years ago,
Yes.
and there was all the issues of metal insulation, some people dying, etc., which wasn't great,
Yes.
but the government pretty much overnight withdrew their support from that market and said, well, we're not going to spend any money on insulation anymore.
Yes.
And yet there was all these businesses that had grown up around that, had employed people,
Yes.
and they were pretty much overnight out of business. So you saw them on the lawns of, Parliament House in Canberra going, well, but the savvy business owner would have realised they only had one customer. They might have been putting insulation in for mum and dad all around Melbourne, but they only had one customer. The person who was paying for it was the government.
Yes.
And this has happened multiple times in the green area with government.
Yes.
Water tanks, solar, LED lights, all these things. So
Yes.
you really need to be on tap with what's going on. If a new business comes into town, you're in a strip shop,
Yep.
running a small business, and then a new business comes into town that offers something very similar to you, you need to be responding. You can't just sit there, the old ostrich thing, stick the head in the sand and hope they go away, because they probably won't.
You touched on a very interesting point there, and that is that who is your customer, of identifying that, because I think a lot of a lot of small business owners that I've met and worked with over the years have an idea that their customer is the person who comes in and buys something from them.
Yeah, sure.
And to a degree that is correct. But oftentimes, anybody with money and who breathes and has got two legs who can walk in the shop is not necessarily your real customer.
Sure, that's right.
How does the small business owner really understand who their customer is and define that? Is there, in that planning process, is that something that you look at?
Certainly in the research stage, you need to be, probably most business owners will have some sense of the type of customer generally.
Yes.
Some will think it's everyone.
Yes.
And totally, if you sell milk and bread in a corner shop, it could be.
Absolutely.
Although the corner shop's sort of going by the wayside
Yes.
these days. But most businesses naturally have a particular niche they would be better at.
Yes.
For whatever reason.
Yep.
You see a splitting of these different markets. Sometimes you'll see businesses that go for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
They're generally bigger. They generally have volume opportunities. The Coles and Woolworths of the world, they're going for pretty much everyone. That doesn't stop a really niche, providor from providing specific parts to a specific type of part of the industry to do that.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I always recommend small business owners think more niche than mass market, because there's more strength. If you can tap into that particular customer audience, you're going to spend less money or less resource getting the customers. The problem with not targeting, targeting is a key part of marketing.
Yes.
If you don't target, you don't know where to spend your money. So to give you a perfect example of this, let's say you were a physiotherapist.
Yes.
And you could naturally offer physiotherapy to everyone, but where would you advertise? I don't really know, and I'm going to have to spend a lot in a lot of places to do that.
Yes.
But let's say as a physiotherapist I decided, well, I'm only going to offer rehabilitation physiotherapy to people over the age of 70,
Yes.
for example. That narrows my marketing right down. Now I could promote just to a retirement village,
Yes.
or I could promote to an over 50s or over 60s magazine,
Yes.
or I could promote specifically to a assisted living area or something like that. So
Or Probus Club. Or
yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
In fact, I took a massage therapist down to a local Probus Club once when he was having trouble with his marketing. I organised a time for him to go and just chat to the Probus Club.
Yes.
He had 50 people in the room because they were all interested. They all had sore backs and sore knees and sore
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah.
And at the end of his presentation, he booked 48 of those 50 people for an initial assessment. Now, he had an offer,
Yes.
but boy, that was much more effective for him than running an ad in the local newspaper, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Hunter, with we've looked at the research, the analysis, and the planning side. If my memory serves me right, it's the implementation comes next.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is really very cool, because now, as a business owner, if you've done those steps correctly,
Yes.
you know
Yeah.
a lot more about where you should be implementing your marketing.
Yes.
So you wouldn't, if you go back to the physiotherapist example now, you're not going to say yes to someone who comes to you from, say, Mix FM,
Yes.
because that's a younger audience.
Yes.
But you might go to Golden Days Radio,
Yes.
which will be a lot cheaper to advertise on,
Yes.
and a lot more targeted to your audience, because that's who's listening to Golden Days Radio.
Yep.
I know that's a very simple example, but
Absolutely, yeah.
it makes things a lot easier to implement a marketing campaign, A, if you know who your audience is, and B, if you know where they are, and then C, if you know what media they consume,
Yes.
because you now can then go, well, most small businesses have small marketing budgets. It's very rare for a small business to have more than a few $1,000s to spend. You don't want to waste it.
No,
So
absolutely.
you can now experiment with 3 or 4 different channels and see what actually works for you.
One of the things that I've heard marketers talk about is, and you touched on it before with the checklist, I can do all these different things. A very simplified form is, one ad, one message. Is that a really pertinent thing to know for a small business owner?
I think so. It doesn't, in the content of an ad, you could write a few other things, but the headline for sure,
Yes.
and the offer should be related to the buttons or that you found in your research. So
Yes.
if quick delivery is a thing, then boy, I'd want the headline to be saying we offer the fastest delivery in town,
Yes.
rather than cheapest price, which may be totally irrelevant to certain audiences. And yet you do see a lot of marketing these days which is very much based on price.
Mhm.
I can always tell that survey hasn't been done if price is the thing that gets promoted as the number one thing. Doesn't mean you can't have specials, doesn't mean you can't have run-outs, it doesn't mean you can't have an offer to attract someone, but if fast delivery was the thing that most customers wanted, that'd be what I'd be putting in my messaging, and I'd be just running that the whole time. And then I'd make sure that I was the fastest delivery. Yeah, and maybe there's a money-back guarantee if it didn't get delivered on time or something like that.
Sure.
And price is an interesting one, isn't it? Because I find that lots of businesses go and they think that they've got to offer the best price, when in fact it's service that customers are really looking for, not so much price. And my wife and I have got a specialist gift shop, in the Yarra Valley where we sell local artisan, things like that. We never advertise anything around price, because we're talking one-off things. But what I do see is that if your products are the same and price is the thing you're talking about, you're going to force people to go for the cheapest price.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And obviously when you're going for the cheapest price, that means the lowest profits for the business and the less likelihood of success.
Yeah, absolutely. And you actually have to move more. There's nothing wrong with a business oriented around good prices.
No.
But they're going to be a volume business.
Yes.
Most small business owners generally can't play that game because there'll be a bigger competitor that can beat them out.
Yes.
So if you're talking a business that's more focused on trying to extract margin,
Yes.
or profit, if you like,
Yes.
we'll call it either way, it'll be interchangeable.
It's the money we get to keep, isn't it?
The money we get to keep after everything else, then you've got to find that relevant thing to your customers.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that some parts of your business could be selling something cheap or that gets valued or added to that package or whatever. It doesn't. That's not the most important thing. But I can usually tell if price is the only thing that's working, that they haven't done enough about thinking about what the customer wants, what they're good at, what's their niche.
Yes.
So generally price comes to the fore when there's no relevant benefit. Because if there was a relevant benefit, people would pay more for something.
Yes.
And I think your giftware example is a perfect example of that. I've just come back from a short break, went to Ezrock. The local Aboriginal community is putting together these beautiful artworks, and you got artwork that might be $5,000. I mean, no one's going to be going, well, I want that cheaper, because there's a whole value equation that they've put together with that. You get to meet the artist. It's supporting the local community, it's helping towards the reconciliation issues, that sort of stuff. But it's got nothing to do with price as such.
Yes.
It's because you're there and you go, well, I want a piece of that artwork, you're just going to pay whatever it is.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And I guess that's one of the other things that we learned from our own business, and that is if you can actually differentiate what your value proposition is, and that's not necessarily just the product, but as you're talking about, this may be the fastest delivery and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It takes you out of that price mechanism or that price comparison, because I read somewhere that in the absence of differentiation, 90% of people choose price.
Exactly, that's right. And that is the marketing equation we're talking about. Is differentiation will generally lead to more margin, more profit, more success for the business owner, because they've matched what they're good at or passionate about or excited about, do you know what I mean, with what is needed with a small group of customers.
Right.
A smaller group of customers, I should say. I mean, it still could be thousands of customers that really want that. But generally price, and I think these days there is a lot of competition in a lot of markets, no doubt. But you do see the most successful small business owners are generally ones that aren't always focused on price. They can have some run-outs, they can do whatever, but they generally don't have as hard a time of it in running the business, because there's enough in it for everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah, cool. So we've covered research, analysis, planning, implementation, and the last point
is detection.
Detection.
The Sherlock Holmes part of it, if you like. And this is probably the weakest thing we found in our benchmark. There was only 5% of businesses in the entire benchmark who had actually measured their marketing in the past 12 months.
Wow.
So that means pretty much it was non-existent.
Yes.
And yet it is the way to have an effective and sustainable marketing program in the future. So if you're going to spend $1, every business owner if you want to spend $1, you want to get more than $1 back. And depending on how much margin you make on your products will determine how many dollars you have to get back. So if you make 10% margin. You probably want to get $10 for every dollar you've spent, because otherwise you're throwing money away.
Yep.
But if you're not listening or not actually measuring when you spend your money, what return you get
Yes.
in the marketing part of your business,
Yes.
then it's pretty tricky to understand your profit equation or your margin equation.
Absolutely.
So let's say, for example, you've decided to spend $5,000 on a radio campaign on a local radio station.
Yes.
And every customer that you get from that is, say, worth $500 to keep things simple. Then you're going to need to get 10 customers
Yes.
to break even.
Yes.
$5,000, $500 a customer. Yes, you might make a bit out of that customer, but just for basically make $5,000 back to just to break even. And probably it's more than that, because you're probably time involved in it as well, writing the radio ad, organising it, etc.
Or the cost of the product that you've got to sell.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those things.
So in all of your marketing, you have to have a way of being able to measure that. Now, that can be called a call to action. Sometimes it's called a call to action, which is like ring now.
Yes.
You know, here's a number, here's an offer. Now, an offer for the radio, in the radio, you might have a specific offer that's only available on the radio. And when somebody rings in, they have to mention the radio station, whether that be Gold FM or 3AW or whatever, to get that offer.
Yes.
Now, that gives you an immediate opportunity to measure that particular marketing, because you've got an offer that's only available on that.
Yes.
If you have the same offer in the print, the radio, the local community, whatever, then you're not going to really know where those customers have come from.
Sure.
There's one question we call the golden question, which is, where did you hear about us?
Yes.
That every business owner should know off by heart. They should drill it into their staff. They should make sure that every new customer that comes in is asked that question.
Right.
Because immediately you've got a survey, almost going back to the start of it again, it's kind of like a cycle thing, but you've got a survey on what marketing has actually brought that customer to you.
Okay.
Some people will then say, well, how do you know they didn't see your radio first and then they saw the print ad and whatever? We usually just say, whatever they tell you it is what it is, because it'll be the last thing that was in their mind, so that'll be the thing that got them to actually call you.
Yes.
You don't want to get too complicated about these things. Keep it simple. You know,
Yeah.
if they said it was the local community program you had supporting the footy club that brought them to you, then do more supporting the footy clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
But you've got to measure,
Absolutely.
because otherwise it's just wasted money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I remember, one particular person who was talking to me was saying about how they were always being pestered to actually buy local newspaper advertising. And everybody talks about, we go out to 200,000 homes and everything else. And when they actually sat down and did the analysis of it, they found that, probably, yes, it did go out to 200,000 homes, but when the readership factor was much less than that, and therefore the cost of actually attracting a customer was significantly higher, because you were paying for a lot of wastage.
Yeah, sure.
And I can imagine that the more mass media types of advertising or promotion probably are the ones that are more risky. Would that be correct?
Yeah, look, they can be risky, especially if you're not planned. If you just say, for example, I've spoken to a lot of business owners in the last 20 odd years, is that they'll say, oh, we had somebody ring up and it sounded like it was a cheap deal to go on radio, and we thought, they get really excited about it. Oh, look, it's 50% off. So that's fine, but it's only cheap if you can actually make it work for you.
Yes.
And if a business owner hasn't done their research, their analysis, their planning, understanding what they're actually talking about, what are they even going to put in the radio ad? We'll talk about price or whatever. They don't really know. So, but if they're well planned, then they'll know what to say in that particular radio ad, and they've got some kind of measure in it, so then they're going to get the response. So there's nothing wrong. I'm a scientist by training, actually, so there's nothing wrong with a bit of experimentation. You can spend a small amount of money on an experiment or a pilot and then get a return, and then you can spend more money on it. But if you blow your whole budget on one thing that you haven't planned, you haven't measured it, then that's a waste of money.
Absolutely.
It is important to make sure you're checking what works in your marketing, because it's just the same as your rent or your staff costs or anything. It's an expenditure, therefore it needs a return for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hunter, in sort of summing up, and working in marketing for 20 years, what would be, and we're looking at this sort of the smaller, medium end sort of market, what would you see as probably being the one or two biggest mistakes that people consistently make?
Yeah. I think the number one is they assume what the customer wants.
Yeah.
It's clear from our benchmark that not many businesses are surveying what customers need. So therefore they're running off what they think they need, which is dangerous because it changes.
Yeah.
It can change very quickly in small business. The other thing is not measuring. Doesn't really matter if you have this massively formal marketing campaign, but if you've done a bit of a survey and you kind of understand that fast delivery is a thing and you've started communicating that and it seems to be working and you're getting more sales and you're measuring that, then you're on the right track. But not surveying and not measuring are both the biggest things that people miss out on doing. It doesn't have to be massively technical, theoretical. You know, you don't have to read 400 pages of a marketing book to know that. Ask customers what they want, do your marketing, see what happens, then you're in really good shape.
Okay. And talking of marketing books, you've actually written one?
Yeah, I wrote a book called Marketing Has No Off Switch, which is to talk about this whole thing that marketing is something that happens all the time. It's not something you can just turn on and turn off in a business. You go, oh, I haven't got any money today, so I won't market. You should be marketing all the time. It doesn't matter whether you've got money or not. You can do marketing for nothing. You can ask questions. Customer comes in, you can have a chat with them and just say, how's things going? Have we done well? They give you a 10 out of 10 on satisfaction for your service, then you know you're doing okay. If they're in your ear about something not turning up on time, that's a survey in itself. Yeah.
Great. And if any of our listeners or viewers would like to get a copy of your book, where's it available?
Well, they can just give me a call, or get on the website and just send me an email. I'll send them one.
Okay, and the website is?
It's bluefrogmarketing.com.au.
Okay, fabulous. Hunter, thank you for spending some time with us today.
You're welcome.
Okay.
All right.
All right.